it going, guys? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. So I got the Cobra engine sitting on the engine stand still, and I've taken a few things off of it, and the oil pan is pretty much ready to be dropped off the motor, and I can finally inspect the bottom end to see what kind of damages have been done to this thing. So as you can see, I took the intake off the top, got the forgot what those things are called, the IMRC plates, I think, off the top of the motor. Put some tape right there so nothing falls into the intake ports and whatnot. But I also got almost all of the oil pan bolts off except for 4. It's just kind of being held up by those right now, but I haven't taken it off yet. I haven't even looked inside of there to see if there's, you know, anything like metal shavings in the bottom of the oil pan, what the oil looks like in there. Nothing. I haven't looked at anything inside of there. So I just wanted to kind of capture all that on camera because it could be really bad, could be fine. I don't know. So we'll get to that in a second. One thing I wanted to show you guys also is that, as you guys know, the clutch on this car is not very good. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that it has a spec clutch in it. It's probably like a stage 2 or stage 3, and it's starting to slip and it rattles and grinds a lot whenever you kind of drive it for a little bit and you go from a dead stop. It's really hard to kind of throttle it. It just, the whole car shakes and whatnot. But I already have a new clutch for the car and it's sitting in the trunk. I think I've showed it already. It's a McLeod RXT with a steel flywheel. You get the keys here. But I was able to go ahead and pick up some other parts from a buddy of mine, as you can see right here. So finally got a 26 spline input shaft for the car. And he also had a few of the other parts that I needed, so I went ahead and grabbed those off of him. But he had these ARP flywheel bolts, which I was gonna get those anyways, and then a new Ford throwout bearing, Ford pilot bearing, and then a brand new Ford clutch fork right there. So it was kind of funny though, because these input shafts have been out of stock for a long time, as many of you guys know. And right as soon as I went and bought this from him, they went back into stock. So I was like, what the heck? Wasn't even worth kind of driving to go get them from him, but it was nice to see him, and we might plan a cruise here soon to go to one of the big Mustang car shows up in Dallas. So anyways, I really appreciate that from him. It helped me out. But also, before we jump into the engine, I did want to show that I've been cleaning and working on the CCWs. And this face went ahead and took some Scotch-Brite, and it has more of a brushed finish to it now instead of the polished look like the rest of them do. I don't know if I'm gonna change the rest of the wheels to look like this one or if I'm gonna go ahead and polish this one out. I do think that this looks pretty good, but the only thing is that if you don't clear coat it, it will start to, not necessarily rust, but it's just, it'll get dirty easier and whatnot. So it's just a little bit more of an upkeep to handle. They're getting there slowly but surely. The CCWs should be on the car very soon. My goal is to have them on the car in about 2 weeks. So without further ado, I think it's time to go ahead, drop the oil pan, see what we find. One thing I wanted to mention also is that if anybody else is working on their engine and you have it on an engine stand because you think it has a spun rod bearing or for some reason something broke inside the motor, obviously the first step would be to drain the oil if you haven't already. But you want to be sure that you don't go ahead and flip the motor over with the oil pan still on. Main reason being is that if there's metal shavings or something in the oil pan, or like chunks of metal, and you flip it over and a piece of metal, you know, falls into one of the heads or into the motor somewhere, you're gonna have a whole nother set of issues coming your way. So just be sure that you know, are smart about it and you take the oil pan down first and then you flip it over. You definitely don't want something falling into another part of the motor where you don't find it, and then you go to start your car up again and then bam, something else goes wrong. So definitely think about that if you're working on an engine yourself. right, guys, so this is interesting. There's little bits of stuff all in there. You can see it. And the oil itself, that looks interesting. Looks a little silvery, if that's a word. I'm not an engine builder. Don't exactly know what this means, but I don't think the motor's toast. But I do think it has a spun rod bearing. So now what I need to do is flip the motor over, and it looks like I'm gonna have to still remove a couple parts to get to the connecting rod, the one that I think has the spun rod bearing. So let's flip it over, and then looks like we're gonna have to get this oil tube off of there, maybe this piece. All right, guys, so I'm not gonna lie, there's not much that scares me about working on cars, but when it comes to working on engines, I don't know why. I don't panic, but I don't like it. I don't like working on engines. It might be because I haven't done it enough, but I just feel like there's so much that could go wrong so easily if you do just like the slightest thing wrong. So I'm definitely kind of scared working on this thing, but it looks like the oil tube isn't too hard to take off. It looks like 2 8mm bolts right there, maybe a 10 mil right there. I think what scares me the most is knowing that I could drop this little bolt right into the engine and never find it. Have to tear it all apart. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, one more. There we go. Now for this guy. That one is not as long as the other ones. Do not underestimate that one. Almost lost it. All right, this thing should come right off. Boom. All right, and we'll set it like that. Okay, now there's the dipstick. Looks like these things are a 16mm, so we're gonna use that. Yeah, we're getting somewhere. We are so close. Set that guy right there. All right, guys, we're so close. Now I just need to figure out which one is cylinder 7. And then I think these are just like a 10mm. There's just 2 bolts. And we can see the damage that's been done, if there's any, to the crankshaft. We can see if the rod bearing has any wear on it. And yeah, that'll tell us what we need to do next. So the cylinder order on these engines are 1, 2, 3, 4 on the passenger side, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 on the driver's side. And since the engine's flipped over, the passenger side is now on the right side. So this would be 5, 6, 7, which is the one we need, and then 8. So number 7 should be this piston right there, which would make it that connecting rod. All right, guys, so I ran into a slight issue here. I cannot turn the crankshaft where I want it to go because of the dowel pins on the flywheel. Believe it or not, these little dowel pins are hitting up against the engine stand when I try and turn it. So I guess I should have done this first, or I guess I should have just taken the flywheel off first, but pretty much now what I have to do is get the flywheel off somehow, or try and get these dowel pins off of the flywheel. But I was sitting here and I was trying to hammer them out with the screwdriver, you know, like a little thing to go in there and push them out, but they're not budging. So I don't know, I don't really want to have to damage, you know, the flywheel at all to get these things off. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and try and get the flywheel off, because I wanted to get this thing resurfaced anyways, but I don't know if I can get it off with it on the stand. Probably not, because the clearances here, I mean, they're kind of tight. I don't know. I don't think it would work, because I wouldn't even be able to pull it off of the engine stand, because the dowel pins would still be hitting this bar. So this kind of sucks. I think the only thing to really do going from here is I gotta put the engine back onto the hoist, pull it, and I gotta pull it off the stand, get the flywheel off, and then put it back onto the stand. To do that, I probably gotta put the pan back on, which now, I don't know if I have to clean the pan. I guess I wouldn't have to clean it really just yet if I turn the motor back over first, put the pan on from the bottom, strap the engine back to the hoist, take it off, get the flywheel off, and then put it back on. That seems like the only thing to really do from here.